June of 1984, South Tyrolean mountain climber Reinhold Messner led an expedition in the Karakoram Mountains. Hans Kammerlander was with him here on the right. Their destination? 2 peaks in the Gasherbrum chain, both just over 8,000 meters high. In the background, Gasherbrum 1. Gasherbrum means the shining mountain. Their plan to climb both mountains, one after the other, without stopping, without fixed high camps, without oxygen, with nothing but backpacks. Messner had already climbed both mountains separately in previous expeditions. The summit of Gasherbrum 2.
I don't have a normal profession. I never learned one thing that I could say I master. I've done a lot of things. I can make a living doing many things. That's all I need. I can finance my expeditions by selling mountain climbing byproducts. I don't need anything else. I'm very glad today that I don't have a profession. I think having one means the end of any kind of creative activity.
Einen Beruf zu haben, das Ende von jeder schöpferischen Tätigkeit ist.
Ja, ich stamme aus einer kleinen Bergbauernfamilie aus Ahornach. Das ist bei St.
I grew up on a farm in the mountains in Ahornach near St. in Taufers in South Tyrol. When I was in school, I worked on our small farm, helped out. My mother died when I was young and my father was sickly. Then I worked as a mason for 5 years, which didn't leave me with much time for mountain climbing, since I also had to take care of chores at home.
Arbeitszeit als Maurer zu Hause gearbeitet habe. Es war wirklich sehr knapp. Samstags habe ich zu Hause gearbeitet. Und dann,
what were the chores at home?
es war eine ganz normale Arbeit am Bauern.
The usual work on a farm. I did everything. I still do when I'm at home.
Vom Stall bis zum
Cleaning out the stalls, working in the fields, everything.
Später dann
Now I work as a mountain guide in the summer and as a ski teacher in the winter, and have a lot of time in spring and fall to climb in the Alps and take part in expeditions.
Sommer, im Winter als Skilehrer und habe jetzt sehr viel Freizeit im Frühling und im Herbst, wo ich meinen Zielen nachgehen kann. Klettern in den Alpen und Expeditionen.
We weren't so much interested in making a film about mountain climbing per se, or about climbing techniques. What we wanted to find out was what goes on inside mountain climbers who undertake such extreme endeavors. What is the fascination that drives them up to the peaks like addicts? Aren't these mountains and peaks like something deep down inside us all?
Hey, John. Where you go? Where you go? There you go. Oh. Karakoram. Yeah. Karakoram. Yeah.
Skardu in northernmost Pakistan, the last town that can be reached by car or plane. Buying supplies with Rosie Ali, a porter and cook, a faithful friend from many previous expeditions.
Und Apricots? This size 4.
Yeah.
You think enough for the porter?
Yeah.
Selecting porters the next morning. Many of them have taken part in Messner's previous climbs. They are Muslim Baltis, mountain people from northern Pakistan.
Okay, he also came that one with me. Let him sit. Now let me go. Stay here. You ask Cardo? Kapalu. John Ross Kelly, viajo estaba. Okay, this also will take.
Right after Skadu, the road stops. The supplies can be transported by jeep as far as the village of Dasso. From there to the base camp, it is 150 kilometers on foot, up a canyon the whole time. The last 60 kilometers is on top of a glacier. The camp will be at an altitude of slightly over 5,000 meters. Halfway up, after hiking for 5 days, we find a resting place where all expeditions enjoy stopping. It is a warm sulfur spring, the last real bath for many weeks.
Actually, nothing more can go wrong than on any other expedition. Of course, we don't know yet if we'll have the strength, the endurance, or even the nerves we'll need to see it through. Nothing like this has ever been tried before. We've got no points of reference. I've climbed 8,000ers before, but never 2 of them in one go. So it's something new, not just for the 2 of us, but for any mountain climber. We're kind of guinea pigs. We pose the problem to ourselves, but we don't know yet if we won't be exhausted after the first peak, or go crazy, or won't be able to stand each other anymore, and have to come back down. Or it could be that after we make the first peak, the desire to realize our goal will give us the willpower and strength to make the second peak. I wouldn't say that this is a new dimension for me, but rather the exhaustion of another possibility. Not the last one, but one of the last possibilities, and I'm very excited. The chances aren't all that good. If we're very lucky, and if we're both in good shape, if the snow conditions are ideal, and that's absolutely necessary, if we're both in good shape physically and emotionally, we could make it.
Körperlich und auch seelisch eine gute Zeit haben, dann könnte es schon gelingen.
Athletes, say like soccer players, forget friendship on the playing field. You two are a team like others. Don't you have to be friends? Could you discuss that aspect a little? How long have you known each other?
Ja, wir kennen uns, glaube ich, seit 5-6 Jahren.
For about 5 or 6 years, but mostly from my work as an Alpine guide in his mountain climbing school.
Und jetzt seit
We've been going on expeditions together for 3 years now.
Are you close friends?
Das würde ich nicht sagen.
I wouldn't say that. We know each other fairly well, and I picked Hans for this expedition because of all the mountain climbers I know personally and have gone through tough situations with. Hans is one of the very few I believe can make it. I've been on about 30 expeditions, not this size, but just as difficult and requiring just as much endurance. At any rate, similar expeditions, and I always pick my partners the same way. I knew them all well. We weren't necessarily friends, but I always had 100% trust in their climbing ability, in their intuitive knowledge of weather conditions and the forces of nature like avalanches, storms, and so on. Above all, I knew that they had as much endurance as I had. Otherwise, sooner or later, we wouldn't make it, or one of us would be responsible for the other's death. Each of us, without really saying it, assumes the responsibility for himself. There's no other way. Not until I know that's clear do I have the peace of mind and self-assurance to ask someone else to join me.
Ja, für den Tod des anderen verantwortlich. Jeder von uns beiden übernimmt, stillschweigend würde ich fast sagen, die Verantwortung für sich selbst. Anders geht das nicht. Und nur wenn ich das weiß, habe ich auch die Ruhe und das Selbstverständnis, den anderen einzuladen und mitzunehmen.
We reach the glacier at an altitude of over 4,000 meters. The porters have already gathered the last firewood. They are all fearful of what is to come.
10 Tagen Fußmarsch.
After hiking through the canyons and then up the glacier for 10 days, a massage like this is great. Ibrahim is a hard-working porter, and even though almost all the others have already left, he wanted to stay to take me apart just one more time. He massaged all of us on the hike up here, and now, before we start our climb, he's especially serious about it.
Er hat das beim Anmarsch immer wieder gemacht bei uns allen. Und jetzt vor dem Gipfel will er es natürlich ganz ernst machen. Er reißt mir die Finger einzeln aus.
Now he's pulling my fingers out one by one. If we understand him correctly, he learned the technique from his father. We're relatively safe here at the base camp.
Hier im Basislager sind wir noch relativ sicher.
No, we are safe. This is a real pleasure. But higher up, it's one hazard after the other. Just above the base camp, there's icefall, with hundreds of crevasses. Further up, there's a pretty steep rock face. And then, of course, there are the storms near the summit.
Weiter oben eine ziemlich steile Wand. Und dann natürlich die Stürme in der Gipfelregion. Am Nanga Parbat beim Alleingang 78.
I had incredible luck on my solo climb on Nanga Parbat in 1978.
Reißt mal die Ohren aus.
Now he's tearing my ears off.
Da bin ich einen Tag lang geklettert.
I climbed all day, made good time, and set up camp above a serac on an altitude of about 6,500 meters, a well-protected spot. The next morning at about 5, I was just breaking camp. There was a little quake. I hardly noticed it, and yet I felt it. The next moment, there was an incredible avalanche all around me, and just below me, an enormous piece of serac, as big as a city block, broke off and went flying out into the valley. For about an hour, I couldn't see the valley. Everything was just one big cloud of snow. The base camp, my own base camp, which I had seen the day before as a red spot, was covered with snow. And later, friends at the base camp told me that it snowed for half an hour, even though the camp was 8 kilometers from the foot of the wall. I was lucky that I was higher up. Had it happened the day before, I would have been airborne by that avalanche.
Und ich hatte das große Glück, dass ich oberhalb dieser Lawine war, oberhalb dieses Abbruchs. Wäre es am Tag vorher passiert, dann wäre ich natürlich mit dieser Lawine einige Kilometer weit das Tal hinausgeflogen. Eine klassische Expedition.
A traditional expedition attempting to climb this mountain, or both, would have porters to transport a ton or two of equipment and supplies. It would be made by a large number of members, set up high-altitude camps with many tents, and with the climbers moving back and forth from tent to tent, camp to camp, would eventually form a pyramid with the strongest making it to the peak. We, on the other hand, climb Alpine style, the way climbers have done in the Alps for centuries. We have a small tent with us, only the clothes we have on. If it gets too hot, we stick them in our backpacks. A thin rope, 2 pickaxes, a special pickaxe that can be elongated for spots where avalanches are especially dangerous, and a titanium pickaxe that's very light.
That rope looks a little odd.
It's not a real rope. It's called a fix rope. We use it double when we belay each other, but we'll hardly ever use it because we climb freestyle. Each of us is responsible for himself. We use the rope if we have to go down rock faces or to cross crevasses, but for the most part we climb everything freestyle, without rope.
Could we see the camera you're taking up with you?
We're taking a movie camera with us, a little Bell and Howell, to use up in the summits, and so to document this expedition.
How many toes has Hans got left?
I still have all of mine, thank God. I haven't lost any to frostbite yet, and I hope I won't this time.
I still have 4. 4 whole toes. The others are gone.
You won't be in radio contact with the camp?
No radio contact. It would be too heavy, and anyway, there's no one here who could come get us. Besides, that would be unjustifiable for us to do something this crazy and then expect someone to save us. It's our risk, and if we don't make it, then that's the way it is.
Only 2 of the porters are still in the camp. Rosie Ali, the cook, baking chapati, a kind of flat bread.
I made my first Himalayan expedition in 1970, and back then we reached the summit of Nanga Parbat in 2 rope teams, one after the other. Of the 4 of us, I'm the only one who's still alive. A German, Peter Schulz, and Felix Kuhn, an Austrian, lost their lives several years later. My brother lost his on that expedition, on Nanga Parbat. Then in 1972, I was on Manaslu, the 7th highest mountain in the world, in Nepal, and a member of the expedition froze to death in a snowstorm on the plateau just under the summit, and another member went mad and died. In all those years, I'd meet mountain climbers time and time again, mostly Englishmen, the best in the world, and 2 or 3 years later, I'd hear that they died on some big expedition. I think mountain climbing is a sign of degeneration in mankind. As long as people have to work hard to earn a living, to keep their houses warm, to work small fields like mountain folks have to, they don't think about climbing mountains. They're afraid of the mountains, of avalanches, of the storms that come down from them, and especially of the torrents that tear up the land. My neighbors, farmers in the mountains where I grew up, in Vilnius, still tell me to this very day that I'm crazy, that it just doesn't make sense to climb mountains, that it would be much smarter to use my energy for something else. And they're not entirely wrong.
Well, what about you? Do you think the fact that you do it means you're a little insane?
Inasmuch as I say that all artists, all creative people are insane. Even art or creativity are forms of degeneration.
Die schöpferische Tätigkeit ist eine Degenerationserscheinung.
The fascination has been inside me for a long time. The fascination is altitude. At the beginning, it was simply curiosity, what it's like when that death zone is higher, what it's like when a rock face is not 1,000 but 5,000 meters high. But I can't answer the question of why I do it, just as I can't say why I live. And I never asked myself the question when I was climbing. The question just doesn't exist then, because my entire being is the answer. When I lie in my tent, especially before breaking camp at 2 in the morning, and think about all the problems and dangers and strains, then I occasionally ask myself, why am I doing this? Why don't I stay down here? Now I don't have to do it. I've already done so much. My ambition has been relatively satisfied, so that motivation is gone. But nevertheless, at least once or twice a year, I feel the need for the chance to measure myself. I don't think there's any better way for someone to do that than extreme mountain climbing.
Diese Möglichkeit, das Maß zu finden. Ich glaube, es gibt keine bessere Möglichkeit für einen Menschen im Generellen, sein Maß zu finden, als gerade beim großen Bergsteigen. If
I climb a mountain in the Alps today, say 3,000 meters high, I don't have that chance. I don't know how this ascent of both Gasherbrums will turn out, what it will be like, especially my inner relationship to it, to the exertion, to the loneliness. And the solitude up there, even though there are 2 of us, far surpasses that of an empty room or the anonymity of a big city. You realize how small you really are, how helpless.
Das ist ein Alleinsein, das weit über das Alleinsein in einem Zimmer oder in einer Großstadt hinausgeht. Und da erst merkt man, wie winzig, wie hilflos man eigentlich ist. Und von oben herunter,
on the way back down, I have the feeling sometimes that I've experienced this. I don't need it again. But then after several months, it's gone. And then, just like with addicts, the desire is there again. Even though I know what a strain it is, and I'm afraid of doing it again. I have to. Just like an addict can't stop. It could be that mountain climbing is just as obsessive and morbid.
Das Süchtigsein, das Rauschgift nehmen sein kann. So krankhaft ist vielleicht auch dieses Bergsteigen.
Could it be, and this is a sensitive question, that this kind of mountain climbing involves a kind of death wish?
I think a death wish is often interpreted into all forms of activity that push the limits of human accomplishment. I never had the desire to kill myself while climbing. If I ever had or have similar feelings, it's in totally different situations, but never while climbing a mountain. I'm even convinced that someone who climbs up the face of a cliff to throw himself off can't actually do it when he's up there.
Ein potenzieller Selbstmörder, jemand, der sich jetzt umbringen möchte, der in eine Wand steigt, um sich runterzustürzen, der kann es nicht mehr.
2 Spaniards, members of an expedition attempting to scale Gasherbrum 2, show up in our camp. After weeks of struggling, snowstorms just beneath the summit forced them to give up. They were exhausted and warned us of the dangers of deep snow and avalanches further up the mountain.
Aquí al principio, comienzo, el plató, todo mucho bien.
Kann man sich vielleicht vorstellen, dass nachdem ihr beiden Brüder doch so nahe zusammen waren,
Do you suppose that because you two brothers were so close, your brother might have died in your place? And might that have given you a different attitude towards death?
Ein anderes Verhältnis zum
I have a different attitude towards death in general because of mountain climbing and also perhaps because of my brother's death, even though I still have the feeling that he's still alive. And not just in dreams, but say when I look at the mountains we climbed together. We were together on the hardest climb I've ever been on, in Mittelpfeiler, on the Heiligkreuzkofel in the Dolomites. And we went through tough situations, where he, as well as I, whoever was belaying, was responsible for holding everything in case one of us fell. And that welded us together so intensely that we can never be separated again. And whenever I look at that rock face today, I can't climb it anymore without my toes. I have the feeling he's still alive, and I feel those hard, dangerous moments so intensely, just as he'd feel them, if he were with me. I don't have the feeling that he died in my place. I have the feeling that I myself died on that expedition. The entire descent, there were moments when I said to myself, it's all over. We can't go any further. Nothing but a sheer rock face dropping off in front of us, and we don't have a rope. What do we do now? Then I climbed back up and by chance found another way down. But there were dozens of moments on the way down where I was sure it was all over. And down in the valley, after he had disappeared, after I had searched for him all night and the next day and waited, and he didn't show up, I didn't care if I died or not.
Und nicht mehr da war, dann war mir auch völlig gleichgültig, ob ich jetzt sterben würde oder nicht sterben würde. Und ich bin dann auch
The rest of the way down, I didn't even think. I just kept on going out of force of habit.
Mehr willentlich, sondern mehr in Gewohnheit. Ich habe auch die Schmerzen.
I didn't even feel the pain. I was barefoot because my feet were so swollen they didn't even fit in my shoes. Then I blacked out, and when I woke up later, I was amazed I was still alive.
Und wieder aufgewacht und habe gestaunt, dass ich noch lebe.
And when I got back, when I got home, I had this feeling that my life began anew with that tragedy. That is, after I came to in the forest in the valley in Diamir.
How did you break the news to your mother?
Meine Mutter hat es viel besser verstanden als alle anderen Menschen.
My mother understood it better than anybody, and yet it was still so hard.
Jetzt gehen wir hinauf.
We're going to start up now, and if the weather gets better, in other words, not like tonight, but like the weather report said with the southeast monsoon, and if we stay up, then we should be back in about a week if everything goes okay. If we don't show up within 10 days, then you can have the porters come and you can leave in 2 weeks. You have the money for the porters. Rosie Ali knows all about them. You'll need 16. The money for the trip home is in Rawalpindi at the Miss Davis Hotel, and in Valgis there are $5,000. You'll turn in the receipt for the money deposited in case of a helicopter rescue mission. So everything is organized and has been arranged so that after you take charge of the expedition, you can pick up the money from the government. If we don't show up in 2 weeks, that means we ended up under an avalanche somewhere or died of exhaustion. There's no point in sending anyone up after us because they'd never find us.
Hans, what about your personal effects here in the tent? Photos and...
There's not all that much. The best thing would be to throw it in some crevasse.
The next morning, they were almost 6 kilometers away and 1,000 meters higher than the camp. They reached the summit of Gasherbrum 2.5 days later. Then the weather changed. Several hours later, the next summit disappeared in a snowstorm. Gasherbrum 1. After 7.5 days of nervous anticipation, the two of them finally appeared at the foot of the glacier. For the last 4 nights, Rosie Ali had stayed up praying. Reinhold, how was it?
Hard. Tough. The last 2 days were... We did it.
Would you take your glasses off, please? What happened the last 2 days?
We risked the summit yesterday, despite the storm, and we found it in the storm. That was the hardest part. We had 50 to 60 mile-an-hour winds the whole day coming down, and we had trouble finding the tent. The only reason we made it back down yesterday was that we managed to come down the ridge that we wanted to. And the icefall, we were halfway across the icefall yesterday, but it was lousy going, and today too, because it was much too warm. We had all the bad weather conditions imaginable, and if we hadn't had such luck on the first one, and the drive to pull it off, we never would have made it.
Hans, how was it for you?
I think if you do something like that often, then the best thing you can do is to sit down and write your will. We really had luck the last few days. And madness.
I'm sure nobody will repeat this again this century, or in this decade.
A water hole in the 100-meter thick ice of the glacier. The temperature is just above freezing. The risk involved is that the gushing water disappears back into the ice after only a few meters. Whoever slips is irretrievably lost. Reinhold, here you sit naked before us, vulnerable. I'd like to ask you a very simple question, and just as naked. What was the point of all this?
I don't know. I've never asked myself why I do it. That goes for the other crazy things I've done in my life. I wouldn't know the answer. I have the feeling every now and then that I can write on those large rock faces that are 3,000 or 4,000 meters high. Like a teacher writes on a blackboard with chalk. But I don't just write lines, imaginary lines. I live those lines. I also have the feeling that afterwards those lines are still there, even if I'm the only one who can feel them, see them, because I lived them, and nobody else will ever be able to see them. But they're there, and they'll be there for all time.
Can you imagine not climbing anymore and doing something else?
I occasionally have the desire to stop mountain climbing and imagine that I just keep walking for decades, maybe forever, just walking, with pack animals or a few porters, from one Himalayan valley to the next, across deserts, through forests, without ever getting anywhere, without looking back, without looking ahead. Just keep on walking until the world stops.
Zurückzuschauen, ohne nach vorne zu schauen, einfach nur gehen, bis die Welt aufhört oder bis die Krümmung sich verliert.
That's strange because I have exactly the same fantasy. I want to have a dog, a husky with 2 leather saddlebags, and just keep walking until I've gone everywhere and there's nothing left.
Ja, das ist ganz interessant, dass ich
Yes, it's very interesting, and I keep imagining, that is, more and more in the last few years, that sooner or later in my life, I don't look back anymore. I don't need anything behind me. And I don't go anywhere in particular. I have no destination. I just keep going and going until the world just stops.
Ich stelle mir dabei die Welt gar nicht rund vor oder
And I don't think of the world as round or flat. To me, the world is never-ending, and then at some point in time it just stops. That is, either my life or the world stops. Presumably it will be that, as my life ends, so will the world. We could follow in each other's footsteps. Mountain climbing isn't all that important to me anymore. Not the climbing part. What counts is just to keep on going and going and going.